If a person was plowing and he struck a rock or a fence and he shook out the plow, until that point, it is the base of pras. But Elliot says one base of pras may make another base of pras. Yeshua says sometimes it does and sometimes it does not. How so? If one plows half a furrow and then plows the other half or to the sides, this makes another base of pras. However, if he plows a furrow's length and then plows from that point on, the base of pras does not make another base of pras. If a person plows over a pit containing corpses to a pile of bones, to a field in which a grave was lost, to a field in which a grave was subsequently found, or through a field where it is not his property, or a Gentile plows, it does not make a base for pros because the ruling of the base of pros does not apply to Kuthians. If a base of pros field is above a tower field and it rain washed down soil from the base of pros to the tower field, even if the field was red and it now turned white, or white and it now turned red, the base of pros soil does not make the tower field into a base of pros. Okay.
Cool. All right. Next up, Mishna. Hey. Okay, so avad keva besocha. So now we have a different type of a base of pras. This is a field in which there used to be a grave. We know that there used to be a grave, but we've lost the markers. Okay. So now everywhere that you go there's a suspicion that there may be a grave over here. Okay. And now the difference between this and a base of pras is that wherever that grave is, it's not just going to have tumor of contact or of moving or whatever. It's also going to have tumas ohel because there's a grave. The grave has got a full body inside it. So it also creates tumas ohel. So now, inside this field over here, so now there's a house there. That's a 2-story house. It was a dumb thing to do. Somebody built a house there, but there's a house there. Okay, so now we're going to know what's going to be the halacha. Okay, so if the doorway of the upper story is exactly above the doorway of the lower story, and you probably have a staircase going up to it, right? But the staircase isn't really going to come into play because it's outside of the area. The staircase for sure is going to be tame, but what's going to happen when it goes into the house? So now, if the doors are exactly aligned, then the aliyah is tahor. Why? Because the bottom floor is obviously an ohel in its own right. The bottom floor for sure is tame, no question about it. Okay. But will tumah get through the doorway of the top one? Now we did all these mishnayos just not so long ago about what happens to the tumah when it hits the doorway. If it actually can hit the doorway, if it hits the lintel of the doorway, then the doorway brings it inside.
Right.
Okay. But what happens is if the doorways are aligned, then let's say whatever's in the walls. Let's start with the walls. If the tumah is underneath the wall, then that's called the tumah ritzutza. And tumah ritzutza, it's a confined tumah, and what happens to it? Just breaks straight through vertically. Okay. What happens if it's underneath the doorway of the lower floor? So now the doorway is a frame. It's an ohel in its own right. It hits the doorway and it'll go into the lower floor. But once it gets there, that doorway is still an ohel, and it stops the tumah from proceeding any higher. So that protects the door frame of the upper story because it's exactly in line. Now, what happens if they're not? If they're not aligned, let's say if the one is slightly out from to the left of the lower floor, then if the tumah is underneath the wall beneath that doorway, then the tumah ritzutza breaks through that wall all the way up until it hits the doorway of the upper story. Then it hits the lintel, and now the lintel is an ohel that's going to spread the tumah and go into the house.
Right.
Okay, so you followed the mechanism over there.
Right.
Tumah dynamics. Okay. Aliyat tumah. Okay. Afar beisa pras afar chutz la'aretz. So when you actually have clods of sand that came from Beit Pras or from Chutz La'aretz, which is basically the same din. Chutz La'aretz, we said, is tameh as a gezerah d'Rabbanan because of the fact that the non-Jews are not careful about burying their dead or whatever, and we declare that anyone who's there. Remember, we had that case in Nazir of the Hilni Hamalka who swore this. She was in Chutz La'aretz and she swore in Azirus. And she came came to Eretz Yisrael and they said to him, "Sorry, you just your first 7 years were not counted because you've been sitting in Chutz La'aretz the whole time." Right. But even the earth from Chutz La'aretz, that was like let's say you imported a bunch of potatoes, and there's still clods of earth on the potatoes. So that is going to that's going to be tamei. Mitztarfin kechosam hamarzufin. They join together. The amount of the shear of the minimum shear of this earth to convey tuma is called the chosam hamarzufin. The seal of the, what's the translation?
Packing sacks. The seal of the seal of packing sacks.
Right, the seal of the packing sack. So however much soil you need to do that, if you gathered together all the clods, according to Rabbi Eliezer, if you gathered together all of the bits of sand from inside that parcel and pushed them together and it made that minimum shear, then it's all tamei. No, they said we don't clump it together to get the shear. We want to see if there is an existing clump that size, then we count that as tamei. But if it's just a bunch of sand, that's not clumped together, we don't clump it all together to see if it reaches the minimum measure. It's got to be all in one place in order for it to be tamei. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Maaseh shayu igros bas b'miyodin asayam. So Rabbi Yehuda comes in and brings a Maaseh shaya that gives support to the Chachamim, that there was a mail sack basically came from overseas, Livnei Kohanim Gedolim, and a bunch of letters that were for the children of the Kohen Gadol. Now the Kohanim are going to be particularly careful about Tumah and Tara, okay, especially if they're from the family of the Kohen Gadol. There were so many seals, and there was a lot of sand that came along with it, but no one piece was the requisite size. And the Chachamim never told them you got to be worried about Tumah. They just said, forget about it. It's kosher. Okay, and that is the halacha. All right, chapter 18. I think that's the last chapter, isn't it? A long one, but yeah, it's okay. 10 Mishnayos. All right, Ketzad Botzrim Beisapras. Now, okay, so just a little bit of background over here. When it comes to Tumah and Tara of grapes, so before we get into halachas of Beisapras, let's just talk about Tumah and Tara of fruit. Now we know that any produce that's been cut off the ground is tahor, and it cannot become tamei until it's mukhshar, right? Mukhshar means it's been wet by one of the 7 liquids,
right?
And not only that, but the wetting has to be to the owner's satisfaction, even at least retroactively. So if you harvested a bunch of, let's just say, apples. I want to use apples over here. You harvested a bunch of apples and left them out overnight, and there was a storm, and they got wet. And the farmer came and said, "Oh no, what a mess it's made over here. That doesn't make it mukhshar." But if he looks at it and says, "Oh, that's so nice. The rain went and washed my apples. Boom, mukhshar." Okay. Now that's just regular fruits. Grapes are a different story. Okay, grapes, especially when they're being taken for wine, they're put into you'll harvest them and put them into a basket, typically a sealed basket. And if they start dripping grape juice out of them, that grape juice is technically called wine. So that's one of your 7 liquids. Right. Okay. And whether or not we basically that's going to have that's immediately going to be machshir them for tumah, especially if you're looking to make wine. If you're just selling grapes to eat, then this doesn't all apply because nobody wants the things to be all sticky when you put them in the market. But if you're taking them to the vat, okay, that's
kashivas of the grapes, then, because of what it's for,
and what the intention is for the grapes. So Chachamim basically said, when it comes to grapes that are being harvested for the vat, we're going to treat them as susceptible to tumah immediately. Okay, so it means that people who are harvesting the grapes have to be tahor. They themselves have to be tahor, and they've got and they've got to treat all of this batara. Otherwise, the grapes will become tummy. All right. So now, that all said, that's just an introduction to the fact of what happens if you have a vineyard in the middle of a base of press, where you want to go in and harvest the grapes for wine, but everyone inside, but everything inside there is automatically going to be tameh. So now we put in some leniencies over here from the fact that this whole thing about having to harvest grapes, batara, is already a din d'Rabbanan. So Rabbanan, when they made this din, they baked into it certain leniencies for how to handle a vineyard in a base of press. Okay, so and there's going to be a whole ritual that we're going to show that to show that this is different, to make people sit up and notice that this is not the normal way of doing things. And we say, oh, why are they doing this? Oh, because it's a base of press. You shouldn't learn out the halachas over here to anywhere else. Okay, so how do you do you harvest the grapes in a base of press? Mazim al adam v'al hakelim v'shonim. So first of all the people who are going to do the harvesting need to go through the paraduma process. Okay, and according to some opinions, that's even if they're already tahor. They're doing this specifically as a siman that we're doing something out of the ordinary here. All right, so now they're tahor people. They're walking into the base of pras, which means that technically they're becoming tameh again. But for the purposes of our thing, the base of pras is a gezerah d'Rabbanan, and the whole thing of harvesting grapes is a gezerah d'Rabbanan. Okay, so the harvesters go through, they pick the grapes, put them into baskets, and then they take them and they put them in a basket outside the base of pras. And then other people who are tahor can pick up these baskets and take them to the
Is
wine.
there also that the sprinkling is repeated? They do it again
on the third day and the seventh day. That's part of the part of the paraduma ritual. Okay. Im nagu elu be'elu, and if the people on the inside touch the people on the outside, they become tameh. Okay, because they're people who are in the base of pras. So this is the halacha of Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai is even more machmir. Okay, Beis Shammai omrim oches is hamagal b'siv. You got to. These people can't even harvest the grapes by hand. They have to hold the sickle itself with some sort of a cloth so that the tumah doesn't transmit from their hands onto the sickle. Or botzer betzur, or you should use a sharp rock, a sharp stone, because the stone implements are inherently impervious to tumah. That way you won't transmit. So he basically put the basket under the grapes, cut it and let it fall so that you don't touch the grapes. Okay. And then you can take the grapes to the so there's one leniency is that the people who are inside can then also carry the basket to the wine press as long as they're not touching the grapes. Everything is fine. Amar Rabbi Yossi b'medvar memorim. So in which cases do we say that you got to go through all this ritual? B'krema nasa beis ha-pras. When there was a vineyard and it became a base of pras. It's like somebody plowed the grave into the vineyard. Okay. Aval hanoteo base of pras yimachel shuk. But if somebody lechatchila went into a base of pras and planted a vineyard, we don't give him any heterim. That's deliberate violation of a base of pras. In this vineyard now cannot be made into wine. You just have to sell everything as grapes for eating. Okay. Mishna base. Shlosha base prasosen. There are 3 different varieties of a base of pras. Hachoresh es hakever, one who plows over the grave that we spoke about before. Nitas kol neta. So in that field, you can plant any kind of plant. The einan izras kol zera, and it's kol neta, meaning any kind of tree, because trees stay with their roots in place, and you're not worried about uprooting the soil and moving and bringing the bits of bone in with your produce. But you cannot harvest grain crops, annual crops, unless it's a crop that is cut off at the root as opposed to uprooted. Okay, and if he did uproot produce while he was harvesting this Beis Pras, he has to put the whole pile together and sift it. You got to sift it twice to make sure that there are no bones in whatever you're taking to the market. Chachamim say yes, that's true with grain, but with pulse that carries that has a lot more sand sticking to it, you have to sift it 3 times. And he has to burn the leftover straw, because you can't use it because there's still likely to be bones inside there. So burn it, and you cannot use it. So the Beis Pras, we said, is tame for touching and for carrying, but there's no tumas ohel over there, because even if there is a bone, a bone of a barley corn size does not cause tumas ohel. It has to be a rova of bones in order to cause tumas ohel. Okay, let's do chazara.
Okay, we have Yudalad Gimel. The rod that is on top of a doorway, even if it's 100 cubits high, spreads tumah no matter how narrow it is. These are the words of Rabbi Shua. Rabbi Rochanan ben Nuri says, do not treat this any stricter than a ledge. As this type ledge encircles the entire house and overlaps 3 fingerprints of the doorway, if tumah is inside the house, utensils underneath the ledge become tameh. If tumah is underneath the ledge, Rabbi Eliezer rules the house tameh, Rabbi Yeshua rules the house tahor. And the same applies to a courtyard surrounded by an awning. There are 2 ledges, one above and one above the other, each a handbreadth wide, and there is a cubed handbreadth between them. If there is tumah underneath them, whatever is underneath them becomes tameh. If there is tumah between them, whatever is between them becomes tameh. If there is tumah above them, whatever is directly above goes up to the sky and becomes tameh. The upper one extends beyond the lower one by a handbreadth, and tumah is underneath it or between them. Whatever is underneath or between them becomes tameh. If there is tumah above them, directly above it, up to the sky, it becomes tameh. The upper one extends beyond the lower one by less than 1 handbreadth, and tumah is underneath them. Whatever is underneath them or between them becomes tameh. If there is tumah between them or beneath the extension, Eliezer says whatever has been underneath them or between them becomes tameh. Rabbi Yeshua says whatever is between them or whatever is underneath them, the extension becomes tameh, but whatever is underneath the ledges themselves remain tahor.
Okay.
We have base pace. A quarter log of blood and a quarter log of death blood convey tumah if they are from 1 corpse. Rabbi Akiva says even from 2 corpses. If all the food of an embryo, if all the blood of an embryo emanated, Rabbi Akiva says even a tiny amount conveys tumah, whereas the sages say only there is a quarter log. An olive's volume of worms, whether alive or dead, Rabbi Eliezer declares a tameh like the flesh of a corpse, but the sages declare tahor. The ash of cremated corpses, the Rebbe Eliezer says its minimum measures to convey tumah is a quarter cup of ash. They'll come and declare it tahor. A little more than a ladle full of grave powder is tameh, Rabbi Shimon says it's tahor. A ladle full of coarse powder that was kneaded with water but not considered connected in respect to tumah. These convey tumah via touch or anything, but do not carry tumah via hail. A bone the size of a barley cone, the land of the nations. A field in which a grave was plowed over a limb severed from a corpse, or a limb severed from a living body that is lacking sufficient flesh to heal. And a spine and a skull that are incomplete. How much is considered missing in the spine going to be considered incomplete? But Shammai says 2 vertebrae, but Simmel says even 1 vertebrae. And the skull, Reb Shammai says as large as the hole made by a gimlet. But Hillel says an amount of which, if removed from a living person, would cause to die. Which gimlet are they referring to? The small one used by physicians. These are the words of Reb Meir. And can come and say the large gimlet of a temple chamber. The cover of a grave and the support convey tumah if touched into ohel, but not if they are carried. Reb Eliezer says they do convey tumah if they are carried, and Reb Eliezer says that underneath them there is earth on the grave, they convey tumah when carried, and if not, they do not convey tumah when carried. What is support? upon that which the cover itself rests, however, supports for support is tahor.
Yeah.
Okay, base hay. If there was a chatas bird over here and an older bird over there and an undesignated pair in the middle, and then they flew from the middle pair or the two sides, one bird to this, one bird to that side, nothing is lost. Rather, he should say, this bird which went to the katos should be a katas, and that bird which went to the olia should be an ola. If a pair of birds return to the center, those in the center must be left to die, and those which remain in the position of the katos should be offered as katos, and these remain in the position of the ola shall be offered as olas. If a pair of birds repeated and flew from the center pair to each side of groups, they all of them became left to die. One may not bring turtle doves to be paired with young pigeons, but young pigeons to be paired with turtle doves. How is this? A woman who first brought a katas offering with a turtle dove and then brought a katas ola offering with an young pigeon must repeat it and bring an ola with a turtle dove. And if the first brought her ola offering with a turtle dove and then she brought her katas offering with a young pigeon, she must repeat and bring her ola offering with a young pigeon. Because as I says, we follow the species of the first offering. A woman who brought her katas offering after childbirth and then died, the heirs must bring her ola offering afterwards. And if, however, she brought the ola offering and then died, the heirs do not bring a katas offering afterwards. In one case, of the previous thing says when a Kohen inquires, but when a Kohen does not inquire, if there was one pair of obligatory birds offering for the woman and one pair for that one, or two pairs for this and two pairs for that one, or three pairs for this one, or three pairs for that, if he made them all above the red line, half of the mingled offerings are valid and half of them are invalid. If they made them all below the red line, half of mingled offerings are valid and half of them are invalid. If he made half of them above the red line and half of them below the red line of those offerings which are made above the red line, half are valid, half are invalid, and those are offerings which are made below the red line, half are valid and half are invalid. If one woman has one pair of obligatory birds and a woman has two such pairs, another woman has three such pairs, another one 10 such pairs, another one has 100 such pairs. If the Kohen made all of them above the red line, half of the mingled offerings are valid and half of them are invalid. If he made all of them below the red line, half of the mingled offerings are valid and half of them are invalid. If he made half of them above the red line and half above below the red line, the number of the pairs that the largest group is valid. Any situation in which you cannot divide the pairs other than in any way, that woman bird offerings will be both above the red line and below the red line, then the number of pairs in the largest group is valid.
I think you skipped a clause in there, but that's all right.
Okay, all right. So voters are
Okay.
Aleph. If the court were to violate,
Avos.
I'm sorry.
Doing Avos.
I have a voter's order here. Did I skip something?
We just finished Avodah Zarah. So today we're starting Avos. Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai.
Wait a second. I'm sorry. All right. Okay. I have Ohalos. I went on.
Right. So they're in the wrong order. So it's we started with Avos today.
Oh, I'll have to get it. I don't have it yet. I thought automatically we're going to that. All right. So let me just go to Yevamos now.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna have to leave you at this point anyway because it's
all right. Ohalos we're not doing it. I'll get a voters or I get what did you say?
Avos.
Avos. I'll get that and I'll take care of that. Thank you.
All
All
right.
right. Have a good day.
You
Thank
too.
you. Bye.